She got me 2 years in prison. And you know who did it? My daughter. She set me up, then tried to visit me every month, acting like the victim. I refused every single time because I spent those 2 years planning one move. On the day of my release, she realized she'd lost. She screamed and dropped to her knees, begging, because betrayal doesn't go unpunished. The federal agents were already in my office when I got back from Portland. I noticed the black SUVs first, 3 of them parked like they owned the place on Lake Union Boulevard. Then I saw the yellow tape across my door. Thompson Tax Consulting in gold letters. 35 years of building trust with every client. Now looking like a crime scene from some bad TV show. Margaret Thompson, the agent who stepped forward, had that particular blend of professional courtesy and absolute certainty that makes your stomach drop. I'm Special Agent Morrison, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need you to come with us. My hands were shaking when they showed me the documents. $320,000 gone. My client's money vanished through a maze of fraudulent tax returns I'd supposedly filed. The paperwork looked perfect, my signature, my client code, even my goddamn coffee stain on one of the forms from last December. Mrs. Thompson, this account was opened 4 months ago. Agent Morrison slid a bank statement across the interrogation table. The routing shows systematic transfers from your client's refunds. Small amounts, spread out. Very clever. I stared at the account number. I'd never seen it before in my life. Someone set me up, I said. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. I don't know who, but someone with access to your office, your computer systems, your client files. Morrison's eyebrow went up. Mrs. Thompson, who else has that kind of access? That's when I realized how perfectly I'd been framed. My office manager retired 6 months ago. I'd been running everything myself, except when Daniel brought little Emma by after school, except when Victoria, my daughter-in-law, my son's wife, stopped by to check on the old woman while I grabbed lunch. Victoria, who always seemed so interested in how my business worked. Victoria, who'd asked to use my computer just to check real estate listings a dozen times. Victoria, who had a key to the office because family should be able to help out. The trial lasted 3 days. My public defender was fresh out of law school and completely outmatched. The prosecution had everything. Forged signatures that somehow looked exactly like mine. Timestamps showing I was in the office when the transfers happened. Even my fingerprints on the fake account application. I sat there watching my life dismantled piece by piece, and the whole time I kept thinking, who benefits from this? Then Victoria took the stand. Ms. Hayes, you're married to the defendant's son, correct? Yes, sir. Victoria looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat like this was painful for her. Oscar-worthy performance, really. Daniel and I have been married for 9 years. Margaret was like a mother to me. In the past year, did you notice anything unusual about Mrs. Thompson's behavior? Victoria hesitated. Perfect timing, perfect delivery. I didn't want to say anything. She's family. But yes, I saw some things that concerned me. My lawyer objected. The judge overruled, but Victoria continued, her voice heavy with false regret. She'd been making mistakes, forgetting things. I saw her working late, doing calculations over and over. Once I came by and found her moving money between accounts. She said it was for tax efficiency, but it seemed odd. I thought maybe she was just getting old, losing her edge. I wanted to stand up and call her a liar. I wanted to scream that she'd been in my office alone a dozen times, that she'd had every opportunity to set this up. But my lawyer grabbed my arm, whispered urgently about making things worse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. 2 years, federal prison, restitution of $320,000 I didn't have, and the permanent destruction of my reputation. They took me to the county jail to await transfer. Gray walls, metal bed, the smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask something worse. I sat there in my orange jumpsuit, 67 years old, wondering how I'd survive prison. The letter arrived on day 3. The guard slid it through the slot with my breakfast tray. White envelope, careful handwriting, no return address, but I recognized Victoria's neat printing immediately. Margaret, I know this is hard. I want you to know that Daniel and I will take care of everything while you're gone. The house on Pinewood Avenue will. Make sure it's maintained. Keep the property taxes paid. All of it. Don't worry about Emma either. We'll raise her right. Sorry it came to this, but honestly, your time was up anyway. Thanks for the house. We'll take good care of it. Victoria, I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. Thanks for the house, not your house. Not we'll watch over it. Thanks for the house. like it was already hers, like this whole thing had been about getting me out of the way so she could take what was mine. I sat on that metal bed holding that letter, and something cold settled into my chest. Not rage. Rage is hot, impulsive, stupid. This was something else. This was the feeling you get when you're 67 years old and realize you've been played by someone you trusted, someone you welcomed into your family. I thought about the chess games I used to play at the Seattle Chess Society. Long, complicated matches where you sacrifice pieces to gain position, where you think 15 moves ahead, where patience matters more than passion. Victoria thought she'd won. She'd executed her plan perfectly. Framed the old woman. Take her house, her reputation, her freedom, clean sweep. But Victoria had made one critical mistake. She'd assumed that because I was kind, I was weak. She'd assumed that because I'd spent 35 years helping people with their taxes, I didn't understand how to hurt someone. She'd given me 2 years to think, 2 years to plan, 2 years to stop being the victim and become something else. I folded the letter carefully and slid it under my mattress. Then I lay back on the bed and started thinking not about innocence or justice or any of that naive nonsense. I started thinking about what a tax consultant knows, about money trails, about legal loopholes, about the thousands of ways the system can be used against someone if you know where to push. Victoria had taught me an important lesson. Nice girls finish last. Time to stop being nice. Riverside Correctional Facility squatted in the Washington countryside like a concrete tumor. They processed me in on a Tuesday, April 11, 2023. Fingerprints, medical exam, the cheerful orientation where they explain the rules for survival. Don't take anything that isn't yours. Don't look anyone in the eye too long. Keep your head down. I was assigned to a cell with a 23-year-old woman named Jasmine who'd been caught selling stolen electronics. She took one look at me, gray hair, reading glasses, soft hands from 35 years of pushing paper, and decided I was harmless. Tax lady. Huh, Jasmine said on the first night. That's almost funny, like you hurt people with math or something. Something like that. I said. The first month was survival mode, learning the routines, figuring out which guards to avoid, which inmates ran what rackets. I kept quiet, did my work in the prison laundry, stayed invisible. But at night, lying on that thin mattress with Jasmine snoring above me, I thought about Victoria's letter. Thanks for the house. In my old life, I would have been devastated, betrayed, broken, but something had shifted. Maybe it was the orange jumpsuit, or the way everyone assumed I was just another white-collar criminal who'd gotten greedy. Maybe it was knowing that my son believed Victoria over me, that my granddaughter would grow up thinking her grandmother was a thief. Or maybe it was simpler. I had nothing left to lose. I remembered when Victoria first started dating Daniel. He'd brought her to Sunday dinner at the house, my house, the one on Pinewood Avenue that I'd bought 28 years ago when my husband was still alive. Victoria had been charming, funny, attentive, 43 years old, successful real estate agent, great with Emma, even though the child was only 3 then. Mom, she makes me feel safe, Daniel had said after that first dinner, helping me with dishes while Victoria played with Emma in the living room. After Dad died, I didn't think I'd find someone who understood. I'd been happy for him. My son deserved happiness. Victoria seemed perfect. I remembered the day they moved into my house. It was supposed to be temporary, just 6 months, while they saved for a down payment. Victoria had stood in the driveway, shaking my hand. You're doing us a huge favor, Margaret. We won't forget this. That was 5 years ago. The visitation request came in May 2023, 1 month into my sentence. Victoria Hayes and Daniel Thompson listed on the form. I stared at it for a long time in my cell. Jasmine was at lunch, so I had the space to myself. I could picture exactly how it would go. Victoria would sit across from me in the visiting room, wearing her concerned face. Daniel would cry. They'd talk about how hard this was for everyone, how they were supporting me through this difficult time. Victoria would ask if I needed anything, make a show of caring, and the whole time she'd be checking, watching my face, listening to my words, trying to figure out if I suspected the truth. I picked up the form and wrote one word. Across it, declined. The guard who collected it looked surprised. You're sure? It's your son, Mom. I'm sure. She came back the next month, and the month after that, every 30 days like clockwork. Victoria Hayes requested visitation, sometimes with Daniel, sometimes alone. I declined every single time. I never wrote a letter explaining why, never sent a message, just declined in black ink on white paper, over and over. I wanted her to wonder. I wanted her to lie awake at night trying to figure out what I was thinking. Most of all, I wanted her to feel safe to believe that I was just a broken old woman who couldn't face her family. Let her think she'd won. Let her get comfortable. The prison library became my second home. It was small, maybe 200 books, most of them falling apart, but they had a legal section. Inmates doing appeals had donated their research materials over the years. I started with the basics: Washington trust law, estate planning, tax codes I'd memorized decades ago but needed to review. Remembered something one of my old professors at University of Washington had said, back when I was getting my accounting degree in 1978, the tax code is a weapon. Most people just don't know how to aim it. In week 6, I met Officer Raymond Torres during my shift in the laundry. He was supervising, making sure we didn't steal the industrial-sized detergent bottles for some prison operation. I recognized him immediately. I'd done his taxes for 12 years, helped him claim a home office deduction that saved him $4,000 on his mortgage refinance. Mrs. Thompson, he looked genuinely shocked. What the hell are you doing here? Bad luck, I said quietly. And a good frame job. Torres glanced around, then moved closer. Those tax returns they showed at your trial, that wasn't your work. I know your work. You're meticulous. Those forms were sloppy. Yeah, I said. I noticed that too. He studied my face for a long moment. You need anything? Actually, I said carefully, I need to send a letter, not through regular prison mail. Can you help? Torres didn't ask questions. The next day, he brought me a stamped envelope and a piece of paper. I wrote carefully, Ms. Lisa Chen, Private Investigations. I need your help proving I was framed. I can't pay you now, but I have assets you can access once I'm cleared. Please visit Margaret Thompson, Riverside Correctional Facility. I'd found Lisa's name in a legal journal in the library. She specialized in financial crimes investigation. I just had to hope she was curious enough to come. 3 weeks later, I got word that I had a visitor. Not Victoria this time, a private investigator with clearance. Lisa Chen was 54. Built like someone who'd spent too many years sitting in cars on stakeouts. She sat across from me in the visiting room and opened a yellow notepad. Mrs. Thompson, I got your letter. Tell me why I should take a case from an inmate with no money and a conviction for embezzlement. Because I was set up, I said, and because the person who did it made one mistake. She got greedy. Victoria Hayes, check her bank records from February 2023. She paid off $180 in debt right before my client's money disappeared. Check her business partner, Marcus Reed. He got a sudden $45,000 consulting fee at the same time. Lisa wrote this down. That's circumstantial. It's a start, I said. I spent 35 years following money trails. I know how this works. Victoria had access to my office, my computer, my client files. She had motive gambling debts. Probably, knowing her type hand, she had me perfectly positioned to take the fall. Old woman working alone, no witnesses. What do you want me to do? Find the proof. Document everything. I have 2 years to build a case. I leaned forward. And Lisa, I'm not just trying to prove my innocence. I'm going to destroy her. Legally, completely. I want you to find every crime she committed, every lie she told, every dollar she hid. Lisa studied me. That's not about justice. That's revenge. Call it what you want, I said. Are you in? She was. Victoria's next visitation request came 2 days later. I declined it again, but this time I smiled when I wrote the word, because now I wasn't just refusing to see her. I was refusing to let her know what was coming. In my cell that night, I thought about chess again, about how the best players sacrifice material to gain position, about how sometimes you have to lose everything before you can win. Victoria had taken 2 years of my life, my reputation, my business, my relationship with my son. She'd bet everything on me being too broken, too old, too weak to fight back. She'd made a terrible miscalculation. I pulled out the notebook I'd started keeping, hidden under my mattress next to Victoria's letter. Page 1 had a timeline. Page 2 had names. Page 3 had a single sentence at the top. Justice, like chess, requires patience, strategy, and the ability to see several moves ahead. I was playing a long game now, and Victoria had no idea the clock had already started. 8 months in prison teaches you things they don't cover in accounting school. December 2023 rolled around with the same gray walls, the same terrible food, the same morning count where we all stood like cattle waiting to be numbered. but something had shifted. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was hunting. Lisa Chun's reports arrived every 2 weeks, smuggled in through Officer Torres, along with my regular mail. The prison censors saw tax documents and legal papers, boring stuff from an old woman trying to appeal her case. They never looked closely enough to see what I was really reading. Subject Victoria Hayes made a cash deposit of $180,000 on February 14, 2023. Lisa's first report stated, bank records show this as personal funds. Hayes paid off outstanding debts to 3 different creditors within 48 hours. Timeline matches the disappearance of funds from your client's accounts. I sat on my bunk reading this, and Jasmine looked over from her upper rack. Good news, old-timer, educational material, I said. I'm learning how criminals think. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lisa's surveillance logs painted an interesting picture. Victoria maintained her routine like clockwork. Office from 9 to 6, lunch at expensive restaurants she couldn't actually afford, evening drinks with colleagues. She lived large in my house, the house she thought would eventually be hers. Pool parties in the summer, holiday decorations at Christmas, playing happy family with my granddaughter in my backyard. But Lisa noticed the cracks, the stressed phone calls in the parking lot, the meetings with a man named Marcus Reed that lasted longer than professional courtesy required, the way Victoria checked over her shoulder when she thought no one was watching. Subject appears nervous. Lisa wrote in her November report, increased alcohol consumption observed. Subject has visited Riverside Correctional Facility monthly to request visitation with you. Each time declined. This appears to frustrate her. That made me smile. Good. Let her wonder. January 2024 brought rain to Seattle. Constant, steady, the kind that soaks into everything. I watched it fall through the narrow window in the library while pretending to read Washington Revised Code. In reality, I was memorizing Lisa's latest findings. Marcus Reed, real estate colleague at Victoria's agency, 42 years old, divorced, expensive tastes. He'd received a $45,000 consulting fee from a shell company in February 2023, the same shell company that had briefly held some of my stolen client funds before they vanished into Victoria's accounts. He was her accomplice. Had to be. You don't get that kind of money, that close to a major embezzlement, without being involved. Lisa had interviewed 3 of Marcus's former colleagues. One mentioned he'd been weirdly secretive about a special project last winter. Another said he'd suddenly taken a trip to Hawaii in March 2023, right after my arrest, and posted photos of himself drinking expensive champagne. Stupid. Criminals always get stupid with money. They can't help themselves. The next visitation request came in February 2024. Victoria again. No Daniel this time, just her, solo. Making her monthly pilgrimage to check on me. I imagined her in the waiting room, signing in, preparing her concerned face. I wrote, declined, with more force than necessary. The pen almost tore through the paper. Officer Torres collected the form and shook his head. She's been coming every month for almost a year. Mrs. Thompson, your son too. Sometimes, maybe you should know, I said. She needs to keep wondering why I won't see her. It's part of the plan. Torres didn't ask what plan. He'd learned not to dot in my cell at night. I kept my notebooks hidden inside legal textbooks. Jasmine never looked at them. She thought I was just another old woman trying to appeal her case. On page 14, I'd created a timeline. February 14, 2023. Victoria deposits $180,000, cash February 15 to 17, 2023. Victoria pays off debts March 3, 2023. My clients report missing refunds March 8, 2023. FBI arrests me March 9, 2023. Marcus Reed deposits $45,000. The pattern was so obvious it hurt. How had the FBI missed this? Or maybe they hadn't missed it. Maybe they'd just gotten lazy once they had their tax consultant in handcuffs. Clean conviction, case closed. Move on to the next one. But I wasn't lazy, and I had nothing but time. April 2024. Marked 1 year since I'd entered Riverside Correctional Facility. The prison threw no parties. Jasmine got released, hugged me goodbye, promised to stay clean this time. I got a new cellmate, a young woman named Tasha, who'd violated parole on a drug charge. What you in for, old-timer? She asked on her first night. Embezzlement I didn't commit, I said. She laughed. Yeah, everyone in here is innocent. Most people are lying, I agreed. I'm not. Lisa's April report was different. Thicker, She'd been doing what investigators call deep background work, checking Victoria's full financial history, not just the obvious timeline around my arrest. Victoria Hayes had a gambling problem, not just casual poker with friends, serious gambling. Lisa found credit card receipts from Las Vegas trips, online betting accounts under shell email addresses, debts to 3 different bookies that totaled $180,000. By January 2023, exactly $180,000, Victoria had been desperate, drowning in debt, and then suddenly, miraculously, in February 2023, she wasn't all paid off. Clean slate, and all it cost her was framing her mother-in-law and stealing from innocent clients. I read that report 3 times. Then I wrote Lisa a short note. Keep digging. I want everything. Bank accounts, tax returns, business dealings, parking tickets, everything. When we move against her, I want it to be total. Lisa's response came 2 weeks later. Understood. Also, Hayes filed a visitation request for Mahar's 12th attempt. Should I arrange countersuit? I wrote back, no. Let her come. Let her keep coming. I want a record of every single visit she tried to make. Shows she knew something was wrong. Couldn't leave it alone. May, June, July, 2024. The visits kept coming. The declines kept going back. Each one, a little victory. A reminder that I was controlling this game now, not her. Lisa found Marcus Reed's weak point in August. Taxes. He'd reported that $45,000 payment as consulting income, but had used most of it for personal expenses that couldn't possibly be business. The Hawaii vacation, a new car, designer watches sold, documented in his social media posts, tagged and dated like evidence he'd gift-wrapped for us. Reed is our leverage point. Lisa wrote, if this goes to court, he'll flip on Hayes to save himself. Guaranteed. I filed that information away carefully. Not yet. Not until all the pieces were in position. September brought cooler nights and the realization that I'd been locked up for 17 months. 17 months of gray walls and bad food and the same routines. But I wasn't the same woman who'd entered these gates. That woman had been soft, trusting, naive enough to think good work and honest living meant something. This new version of me understood better. Life wasn't fair. Justice wasn't guaranteed. And sometimes the only way to win was to play the long game better than your opponent. Victoria's October visit request arrived with a note. Please, Margaret, we need to talk. It's about Emma. Using my granddaughter as bait. Classy. I declined it faster than usual. Lisa's October report included photographs. Victoria looking stressed outside her office. Marcus Reed having lunch with her, both looking serious. Victoria checking her phone, constantly the universal sign of someone waiting for bad news. They knew something was coming. They could feel it. They just didn't know what. And that's exactly how I wanted it. December 2024 arrived cold and clear. For months, until release. Time to stop gathering information and start building weapons. My public defender had been useless during the trial, but Lisa had found me someone better. Robert Martinez, a criminal defense attorney who actually believed in my innocence now that he'd seen the evidence. Martinez visited me on December 3rd, bringing a briefcase full of documents and a plan. Mrs. Thompson, the case for your appeal is strong, Martinez said in the visiting room. Chun's investigation shows clear evidence of financial irregularities in Hayes' accounts. Timeline matches perfectly. We can file for post-conviction relief based on newly discovered evidence. That's step 1. I said. What about step 2? Martinez smiled slightly. You want to go after Hayes directly. I want to destroy her, I corrected. Legally, completely. I want her to lose everything the way I lost everything. That requires a different kind of lawyer, Martinez said. Someone who specializes in trusts and estates. I know someone. That's how Jennifer Blake entered my life. 49 years old, sharp as broken glass, with a reputation for winning inheritance disputes that other lawyers called impossible. She visited me 1 week after Martinez, and I knew immediately she was perfect for this. Mrs. Thompson, Jennifer said, spreading documents across the metal table between us. Your house on Pinewood Avenue. Tell me about the ownership structure. I bought it in 1997. I said, paid it off in 2011, when my husband died in 2020. I created a living trust for my granddaughter Emma. She was only 6 at the time. The house went into the trust with me as the trustee. So legally, you don't own the house. The trust does, correct? Jennifer made a note. And who's living there now? Victoria Hayes, my daughter, and her husband Daniel, my son, and Emma. They moved in 5 years ago. Temporary, they said. Then I got arrested, and suddenly they're treating it like it's theirs. Jennifer's pen moved across her notepad. Did you give them permission to stay there while you're incarcerated? No, there's no formal lease, no rental agreement. They're just there. Interesting. Jennifer looked up. Under Washington law, if the trustee is incapacitated or imprisoned, the trust enters a dormant state until the trustee can resume duties, or a successor is appointed. But here's the part your daughter-in-law doesn't know. You can still act as trustee from prison through a designated representative. And if you're released, you can activate a clause requiring review of all occupancy arrangements. English, please, I said. You can kick them out legally, and they won't see it coming until it's too late. For the first time in 20 months, I felt something like hope. Not the warm kind, the cold, calculating kind that comes from seeing your enemy's weakness. How long will it take to set up? I asked. I'll need access to the original trust documents, file some paperwork. Maybe 6 weeks. Your release date is March 12, 2025, correct? Then I'll make sure everything's ready. The eviction notice can be served 90 days after your release. June 10th, middle of summer, when housing is expensive and scarce. I appreciated her attention to detail. Over the next 8 weeks, Jennifer filed papers I barely understood. Amendments to the trust, designation of temporary successor trustee, notice of intention to review occupancy, all legal, all documented, all building toward the moment when Victoria would realize she'd been living in a house that was never hers and never would be. But that wasn't enough. I wanted more. In January 2025, I gave Lisa Chen a new assignment. Find every dollar Victoria Hayes earned that she didn't report to the IRS, every cash payment, every side deal, every penny she hid. I want a complete picture. Lisa's response came 3 weeks later. The report was 47 pages long. Victoria hadn't just stolen my money. She'd been running unreported income schemes for years. Cash payments from clients that never appeared on her 1099s, consulting fees from shell companies, under-the-table commissions from developers who wanted to avoid proper documentation. Lisa estimated at least $67,000 in unreported income just in 2024 alone. Add the $180,000 she stole from me, which she definitely didn't report as income because that would be admitting to theft, had $247,000 in taxable income the IRS knew nothing about. Spent 35 years helping people navigate tax law. I knew exactly what happened to people who hid that much money from the government. Penalties, interest, potential criminal charges. The IRS didn't play games. Lisa, I wrote back, document everything. I want dates, amounts, sources. Make it when I get out, we're handing this to the IRS. In February, Victoria made her 20th visit request. 20 months of trying to see me. 20 months of me saying no. I wondered if Daniel knew how obsessed she'd become. I wondered if he questioned why his mother refused to see her own family. Let him wonder. He'd chosen his side. The last report from Lisa before my release arrived on March 1st. She'd found the final piece. Marcus Reed had been having an affair with Victoria. Not anymore. It ended badly in late 2024, but he'd kept records, texts, emails, photos, the kind of documentation angry ex-lovers keep as insurance. Reed will cooperate if approached correctly, Lisa wrote. He's afraid of Hayes now. Thinks she might blame him if anything goes wrong. Classic criminal psychology. Thieves turning on each other. I filed that away too. Another weapon for the right moment. Officer Torres found me in the library on March 8th, 4 days before release. You've got that look, he said, like you're planning something. Just thinking about freedom, I said. Mrs. Thompson, whatever you're planning, be careful. Hayes isn't going to take this lying down. Neither am I said. That's the whole point. On my last night in Riverside Correctional Facility, I lay in my bunk and reviewed everything. The timeline, the evidence, the legal structures Jennifer had built, the IRS documentation Lisa had compiled. 23 months of patient, methodical preparation. Victoria thought she'd won by framing me. She thought the old woman would rot in prison while she lived the good life in my house with my son, raising my granddaughter as her own. But Victoria had made one critical error in her planning. She'd assumed I'd break. She'd assumed prison would destroy me, that I'd come out beaten and helpless. Instead, I'd spent 23 months becoming someone new, someone harder, someone who understood that nice girls finish last, and I was done being nice. I'd learned something important from chess. Sometimes you sacrifice a piece to gain position. Sometimes you lose your queen to set up checkmate. Victoria had taken 2 years of my life. Now I was going to take everything from her, and it would all be completely legal. February 2025. 1 month until freedom. That's when Victoria finally figured out something was wrong. Officer Torres handed me the notification with a grim expression. Someone's been asking questions about you on the outside. Private investigator named Danny Moss. Cheap license, works out of a strip mall. He's been calling the facility trying to confirm your correspondence logs. I'd been expecting this. Lisa had warned me that Victoria might get nervous eventually. 22 months of decline visits would make anyone suspicious, especially someone with as much to lose as my daughter-in-law. Let her dig, I said. There's nothing she can find that will help her. But Torres looked concerned. Mrs. Thompson, if Hayes knows you're working with lawyers, she might try something preemptive. I'm counting on it. 3 days later, Jennifer Blake called. Her voice on the prison phone was tight with controlled anger. Margaret, your daughter-in-law just filed for adverse possession of your house. She's claiming 2 years of continuous occupation with maintenance and care of the property while you were incarcerated. She's arguing that the trust is invalid because you can't serve as trustee from prison. I smiled. The guard monitoring the call probably thought I was crazy. Jennifer, that's exactly what we needed. She just put her intentions in writing, filed with the court, public record. She's documented her greed for us. You knew she'd do this. I hoped she would. Victoria's smart, but she panics under pressure. She's been feeling safe for too long. Those monthly visits she kept trying to make she was checking on me, making sure I wasn't planning anything. Now she knows I am, so she's trying to grab the house before I get out. It's predictable. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. I can block this filing. There's a technical error in her paperwork. She listed the property owner as you personally, not the Emma Rose Thompson Trust. Basic mistake, but it invalidates the whole petition. Do it. Make her look incompetent. And Jennifer, make sure the rejection gets filed publicly too. I want a paper trail of her trying to steal from her own daughter's trust fund. Understood. Margaret, you've gotten cold. No, I said. I just stopped being warm. Lisa Chun's final report before my release was comprehensive. She'd tracked Victoria's movements for the past 3 weeks. The woman was falling apart. Multiple meetings with her cheap private investigator. Long lunches with Marcus Reed where they argued loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Late night drives past the Riverside facility. Like she was trying to work up courage to demand answers I wouldn't give. The gambling debts had returned. Lisa found records of Victoria visiting a casino in Portland twice in January, losing money she didn't have. The pattern was reasserting itself. Stress made Victoria gamble. Gambling made her desperate. Desperation made her stupid. Perfect. On March 1st, I received a letter from Daniel, my son. His handwriting was shaky, uncertain. Mom, Victoria says you've been plotting something. She says you hired lawyers to try to take the house. That's not true, is it? We've been taking care of everything while you were gone. We kept the property taxes paid, maintained the yard, everything. This is our home now. Emma's home. Please don't do anything that would hurt your granddaughter. Daniele read it 3 times. Each time it hurt less. He'd chosen his side. He'd believed Victoria's version of events, believed I was guilty. And now he was defending the house they'd stolen from me. My son thought I was the villain in this story. I wrote back, Daniel, you'll understand everything soon. The house belongs to Emma. It always did. I made sure of that in 2019 when I created her trust. You and Victoria have been living in your daughter's property rent-free for 2 years. We'll discuss this when I'm released. Mom short, factual, cold. Officer Torres collected the letter and studied my face. You okay, Mrs. Thompson? Better than okay, I said. Everything's falling into place. March 11th, the day before my release, Victoria made her final visit attempt. Request number 23. I pictured her in the parking lot, signing in one last time, desperate for any indication of what I was thinking. I wrote, declined with a flourish. That night, my last night in Riverside Correctional Facility, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. I lay on my bunk reviewing the plan step by step. Jennifer had filed all the necessary paperwork. The trust was reactivated. Successor trustee appointed. Eviction notice prepared for 90 days post-release. Lisa had compiled the financial evidence for the IRS. Robert Martinez had my appeal ready to file, based on the new evidence of Victoria's fraud. Every piece was positioned perfectly. I'd sacrificed 2 years of my life, my queen, in chess terms. But now Victoria's king was exposed, and I had 14 different ways to deliver checkmate. The next morning, March 12, 2025, they processed me out at 6 a.m. I walked through those gates carrying one small box of belongings, legal documents mostly, and my notebooks with their carefully tracked timelines. The Washington morning was just starting to paint the sky gray. The air smelled like rain and freedom. Jennifer Blake was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a silver sedan, professional as always, dressed in a gray suit that probably cost more than my entire prison wardrobe. "Good morning, Margaret," she said. "Ready to go home?" "Not yet," I said. "First, I need to make a statement." We drove to a bank in Seattle where Jennifer had arranged for me to access my accounts frozen during my incarceration, but now reactivated. I had $83,000 saved. Not much for 2 years of legal work, but Lisa and Jennifer had agreed to defer most of their fees until after my appeal succeeded. "We believe in you," Lisa had said during our last prison meeting, "and we believe in taking money from people like Victoria Hayes." From the bank, we went to a law office on 4th Avenue. Jennifer's firm occupied the entire 15th floor, glass walls, modern furniture, the kind of place that screams success. We sat in a conference room overlooking downtown Seattle, and Jennifer spread documents across the mahogany table. "Everything's ready," she said. "The moment we file the eviction notice, Victoria and Daniel will receive official notification. 90 days from today, June 10th, a sheriff will remove them from the property if they haven't vacated voluntarily." "And the accumulated rent?" I asked. $52,800, based on comparable properties in North Seattle. "The trust has legal standing to pursue collection. We can attach any assets Victoria has, which, according to Lisa's research, isn't much." I looked at the paperwork, months of preparation condensed into legal language that would destroy Victoria's comfortable life. "One more thing," I said. "I want to be there when she gets the news. I want to see her face." Jennifer smiled. "I thought you might. She's waiting at the prison gates. Shall we surprise her?" They were waiting when we pulled into the Riverside Correctional Facility parking lot. Victoria's BMW Elise, Lisa's research had revealed, not owned, was parked near the exit gate. I could see them through the windshield. Victoria in the driver's seat, Daniel beside her, Emma in the back. My granddaughter, 8 years old now. I hadn't seen her since before my arrest. "You don't have to do this," Jennifer said quietly. "We can serve the papers through normal channels." "No," I said. "I want her to know. I want her to understand that I knew all along." We got out of the car. Victoria saw me immediately and climbed out, her face arranged in what she probably thought was a welcoming expression, concerned, caring, the dutiful daughter-in-law picking up her mother-in-law from prison. I'd spent 2 years imagining this moment. Reality was better. "Margaret," Victoria called out, walking toward me with her hand extended. "Welcome back. We're here to take you home." I stopped 3 feet away, didn't take her hand, just looked at her. She was aging poorly, new lines around her eyes, gray at her temples. The stress of wondering what I knew had taken its toll. "Home," I said. My voice came out colder than I'd intended. "You mean my house on Pinewood Avenue, the one at 4127 that I purchased in 1997. Victoria's smile flickered. "Well, yes, we've been maintaining it for you. Everything's exactly as you left it. Everything except my freedom, my reputation, and $320,000 of my client's money that you stole." The parking lot went silent. Daniel had gotten out of the car now, Emma's hand in his face went pale. "Mom, what are you?" "Daniel, take Emma back to the car," I said without looking at him. "This conversation is between me and Victoria." Victoria's fake smile was gone now. Her jaw tightened. "Margaret, I understand you're upset about what happened, but accusations like that, accusations." I pulled the envelope from my jacket, the one Jennifer had prepared. "Let me tell you about accusations. Victoria, February 14th, 2023. You deposited $180,000 in cash to pay off gambling debts. March 8th, 2023, I was arrested. Timeline matches perfectly. You had access to my office, my computer, my client files. You forged the documents, set up the fake account, transferred the money, and framed me." Victoria's face was transforming, the confident mask cracking. Her skin went from healthy tan to something closer to old newspaper. Her hands, which had been gesturing casually, suddenly didn't seem to know where to go. You can't prove." "I have 2 years' worth of proof, bank records, surveillance footage, witness statements." I took a step closer. And your accomplice, Marcus Reed. He's very interested in making a deal with prosecutors to avoid his own charges. Funny how criminals turn on each other. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. She looked like a fish that had just realized it was on a hook. It was magnificent. But let's talk about the house, I continued. That's why you're really here, isn't it? You thought you'd drive me back, get me comfortable, make sure I wasn't going to cause problems, keep me under control. We're family, Victoria managed. We're not family. You're the woman who destroyed my life to steal my property. Speaking of which, I gestured to Jennifer, who stepped forward with her briefcase. This is Jennifer Blake, specialist in trust and estate law. Jennifer, would you explain to Victoria about the house? Jennifer's smile was professional and merciless. Ms. Hayes, in 2019, Mrs. Thompson transferred the property at 4127 Pinewood Avenue into an irrevocable living trust for the benefit of her granddaughter, Emma Rose Thompson. Mrs. Thompson served as trustee. Upon her incarceration, the trust entered dormant status. Now that Mrs. Thompson has been released, she has transferred trusteeship to a professional trustee, who will execute the trust's purpose, preserving the asset for the beneficiary. She handed Victoria a document. Victoria took it with shaking hands. That's an eviction notice, Jennifer continued. You have 90 days to vacate the property. June 10, 2025. You'll also owe $52,800 in fair market rental value for your 2-year occupation. The trust will pursue all legal remedies to collect this debt. Victoria stared at the paper. Her hands were trembling so badly the document rustled like leaves in wind. Her face had gone from newspaper gray to something closer to white chalk. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool March morning. You can't do this, she whispered. We have rights. Adverse possession. I filed. Your filing was rejected yesterday, Jennifer said. Technical errors. It's public record. You attempted to claim ownership of property held in trust for your own daughter. That shows intent to defraud, which will be very interesting to prosecutors when they review Mrs. Thompson's case. This is insane. Victoria's voice cracked upward. Margaret, you're doing this because you're angry, but think about Daniel. Think about Emma. You're going to make your own granddaughter homeless. Emma owns the house, I said quietly. She'll get it when she turns 20. In the meantime, Daniel can rent an apartment like a normal adult. You, on the other hand, I paused. Let the moment breathe. You're going to lose everything. The house is just the beginning. Victoria's eyes went wide. Actual fear now, replacing the arrogance. What did you do? I spent 2 years planning, I said. Every month you came to visit, trying to make sure I didn't suspect anything. Every month I declined, and you went home more nervous. You should have left me alone, Victoria. You should have taken your stolen money and disappeared. Instead, you got greedy. You tried to take my house too. You're bluffing. But her voice had no conviction. Am I? I tilted my head. I guess you'll find out soon enough. Enjoy the next 90 days in the house, Victoria. Make some good memories. They'll have to last you. I turned to Jennifer. Let's go. I need breakfast. Prison food was terrible, and I've been dreaming about real coffee for 2 years. As we walked to the car, I heard Daniel calling after me. Mom, please, we can talk about this. I didn't turn around, didn't respond, just got in Jennifer's sedan and let her drive me away from the prison, away from Victoria's shocked white face, away from 2 years of concrete and steel. In the rearview mirror, I watched Victoria standing in the parking lot, still holding the eviction notice, her mouth moving but no sound reaching me. Daniel had his hands on her shoulders, clearly asking what was wrong. Emma stood beside them, confused and scared. It wasn't perfect. Hurting my son wasn't part of the plan I'd enjoyed, but he'd made his choice when he believed Victoria over me. How do you feel? Jennifer asked as we merged onto the highway toward Seattle. Hungry, I said, and patient. This is move 1. I have 13 more planned. Jennifer laughed. Margaret Thompson, I think prison made you terrifying. No, I said, watching the countryside roll past. It made me strategic. April rolled in with that persistent Seattle rain that makes everything feel like it's waiting for something to break. I'd been out of prison for 3 weeks, living in a modest apartment Jennifer had helped me rent, not the house that would wait until June 10th when the sheriff evicted Victoria. For now, I had a 1-bedroom place with a view of the parking lot and enough space to rebuild my life, or rather, to finish tearing down Victoria's. Lisa Chen called me on April 7th. Margaret, It's done. I submitted the financial investigation report to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division this morning. Everything's documented. The $180,000 in unreported income from February 2023. The $67,000 in cash consulting fees from 2024. All of it. They confirmed receipt and opened a case file. I was drinking coffee on my small balcony, watching the rain. How long until they contact her? Criminal investigations usually take time, but this case is straightforward. I'd estimate 2 to 3 weeks before she gets the first notice. Margaret, when they see she didn't report income that matches exactly with embezzled funds from your case, they're going to connect the dots fast. Good, I said. That's the point. The beauty of it was simple. I hadn't done anything illegal. Lisa had compiled publicly available financial records. I'd submitted a detailed citizen's report to the IRS, something any American can do if they suspect tax fraud. The fact that the suspect was my daughter-in-law, who'd framed me for embezzlement, that was just context. Robert Martinez, my criminal defense attorney, had been watching Victoria's attempts to fight the eviction. She's hired 3 different lawyers. Robert told me over lunch at a downtown diner. Every single one has told her the same thing. The trust is ironclad. One of them actually laughed when Victoria suggested adverse possession after her filing was rejected. The legal community is starting to talk about her, and not favorably. Her reputation's suffering, collapsing. Real estate agents live on referrals and trust. Word's gotten around that Victoria Hayes tried to steal property from her own daughter's trust fund. Her office has started distancing themselves from her. I took a bite of my sandwich. It tasted better than anything I'd eaten in 2 years. What about Marcus Reed? Still employed at the same agency, but he's been very quiet. No social media activity, no public appearances. If I were him, I'd be nervous. Marcus should have been nervous. Lisa's investigation had given the IRS everything they needed to see his role too. The $45,000 payment, the timeline, the shell company connection. He'd helped launder stolen money and taken his cut. The moment the IRS started digging into Victoria, they'd find him. The question was, would he panic first? April 23rd, I got my answer. Jennifer called at 9 in the morning. Margaret, Marcus Reed just contacted the FBI. He's offering to cooperate in exchange for immunity. He's claiming Victoria Hayes forged documents in your name, that he helped move money without knowing it was embezzled, and that he's willing to testify. I set down my coffee cup carefully. He's flipping on her completely. He's scared. The IRS contacted him last week about unreported income, and he realized he's facing potential jail time. He's trying to save himself by giving them Victoria. Margaret, this means your appeal just got a lot stronger. If Marcus testifies that Victoria framed you, that's direct evidence of your innocence. I stood up and walked to my apartment window. Down in the parking lot, normal people were going about their normal lives. None of them knew that somewhere across town, Victoria Hayes's world was imploding. When does Victoria find out? I asked. She probably already knows. The IRS serves notices by certified mail and through official contact. My guess she got the letter yesterday or today. I imagined Victoria opening that letter, that thick official envelope from the Internal Revenue Service, the words Criminal Investigation Division at the top, the detailed accounting of $247,000 in unreported income, the calculation of penalties, interest, and back taxes totaling $340,000. The realization that this wasn't about the house anymore, this was about her freedom. Lisa called 2 hours later. Margaret, Victoria just tried to contact me. Left 3 voicemails. She's panicking. Wants to know if there's a way to work this out before things get worse. There isn't, I said. The IRS doesn't negotiate with tax cheats, especially not ones who committed fraud to hide embezzlement. Did you respond? No. I'm not her investigator. My work's done. I compiled evidence and submitted it to the appropriate authorities. What happens next is up to them. Perfect, I said. Let her panic. Let her try every door and find them all locked. That evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Please, we need to talk." I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. Margaret, I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but please, can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers, no games. I need to explain some things. There's more to this story than you know. Victoria, I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Jennifer and Robert with a note. Documentation of contact attempt. Maintain no communication policy. Robert responded within minutes. Good instinct. She's looking for any way to control the narrative or get information about what you know. Don't engage. I wouldn't. Victoria had spent 2 years in my house playing the concerned daughter-in-law while I rotted in prison. She'd made her choices. Now she could live with the consequences. The April weather grew warmer. My apartment didn't have great air conditioning, but I didn't care. I spent my days walking through Seattle, relearning the city I'd left behind, the coffee shops that had opened while I was gone, the restaurants that had closed, the way downtown had changed. I also spent time at the Seattle Chess Society. My old membership was still active. They'd kept it going, as a courtesy, after my arrest. Some of the regular players recognized me. Most were polite, but distant. One older player, a retired lawyer named Arthur, sat down across from me one afternoon. "Margaret Thompson," he said, "I followed your case. A lot of people thought you were guilty. A lot of people were wrong," I said, setting up the pieces. "So I'm hearing." Arthur moved his pawn. "Word is things are turning around for you. Your daughter-in-law is in some trouble now, isn't she?" "That's what I hear," I said, matching his opening. "Tax problems, criminal investigation, very unfortunate." Arthur smiled slightly. "You know what I appreciate about chess, Margaret? It rewards patience, people who can see the whole board, not just the next move." "That's why I like it too," I said. We played in comfortable silence. I won in 37 moves, a slow, methodical victory that crushed his position piece by piece until his king had nowhere left to go. Arthur shook my hand afterward. "Welcome back, Margaret. Seattle needs more players like you." On April 30th, Lisa sent me a text. "Reed met with FBI and IRS today. 3 hours. He gave them everything. Documents, emails, texts, recorded conversations. Victoria's finished." I sat on my balcony that evening, watching the sun set over the city. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably doing the same thing, but her sunset looked very different than mine. She was watching everything she'd stolen burn away, the house she'd tried to take on in 40 days, the money she'd hidden from the IRS, now evidence against her, the husband who'd believed in her about to learn the truth. Marcus Reed would testify. The evidence would prove Victoria forged my signature, stole my client's money, and framed me for her crimes. That my conviction would be overturned. Her life would be destroyed, and I wouldn't have broken a single law to make it happen. That's the thing about revenge. When you do it right, you don't need violence or threats or illegal acts. You just need to be patient enough to let your enemy destroy themselves with the same tools they used against you. Victoria had used the law to frame me. Now I was using the law to expose her. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's efficient. May brought 2 things: blooming flowers and family drama. The flowers I could handle. The drama was more complicated. Donier showed up at my apartment on May 3rd without warning. I opened the door to find my son standing there, his face red from crying, his hands trembling. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk, please." I almost closed the door, almost told him that he'd made his choice 2 years ago when he believed Victoria over me, but he looked broken in a way that reminded me of how he'd looked after his father died, lost and desperate for something solid to hold on to. "Come in," I said. He sat on my cheap couch in my barely furnished apartment and stared at his hands. "I talked to Marcus Reed yesterday. He called me. He told me everything." Daniel looked up, and his eyes were hollow. "Everything about Victoria, about the money, about the gambling debts and the fraud and how she framed you. Mom," he said, "she planned it for months. She used me. She used all of us." I sat in the chair across from him, didn't move closer. "I believed her," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "When you were arrested, when she testified against you, when she said you'd been acting strange, I believed every word. I thought my mother had turned into a criminal and my wife was trying to protect us." "You chose your wife over your mother," I said quietly. "That's not necessarily wrong, Daniel. You're supposed to be loyal to your spouse, but you should have asked more questions." I know. He was crying now, not bothering to wipe his tears. "She was so convincing. Every month when we went to visit you and you declined, she'd say you were ashamed, that you couldn't face us. She made it seem like you were the one pushing us away." "I was pushing you away," I said, "just not for the reasons she claimed. I was giving myself time to build a case against her." Daniel looked at me with something like fear. "Mom, what did you do?" "Victoria's terrified. She got some letter from the IRS. She's been calling lawyers all week. The house eviction. The investigation is this all you? I reported her tax crimes to the appropriate authorities, I said. I documented her fraud through legal investigation. I activated the trust I'd created for Emma to protect my granddaughter's inheritance. Everything I've done has been legal. Daniel, unlike what Victoria did to me, she's saying you're out for revenge, that you've turned cold. I'm out for justice, I corrected. There's a difference. Victoria framed me for a crime, stole from innocent people, and destroyed my reputation. I'm making sure she faces consequences. If that seems cold to you, consider that I spent 2 years in a cell thinking about it. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I'm filing for divorce. Good. I need to know something, Mom. The house, Emma's house, will she really get it? Yes, when she turns 25, the trust will transfer full ownership to her. Until then, it'll be managed professionally to maintain the property value. That house is worth $485,000. It's her future, and Victoria and I will be evicted on June 10th. If you haven't vacated by then, yes, Daniel, you're my son. I'll help you find an apartment, help you get settled, but I won't let Victoria stay in that house one day longer than the law allows. He nodded slowly. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. He stood up. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I know you can't forgive me right now. I can't, I agreed. Not yet, maybe not for a long time, but you're still my son, and Emma is still my granddaughter. We'll figure out how to rebuild after all this is finished. He left without another word. Lisa called an hour later. Margaret, Victoria's making moves. She just hired a criminal defense attorney. Expensive one, Tunathan Cross, former prosecutor. He's good. How's Victoria paying for an expensive attorney? I asked. Good question. My guess, she's leveraging everything she has left, maybe borrowed from family, or she's planning to declare bankruptcy, and the lawyer knows he won't get paid. What can Cross do for her? Honestly, not much. Marcus's testimony combined with the financial evidence is devastating. Best case scenario for Victoria is a plea deal that reduces her sentence, but she's looking at prison time either way. 2 days later, Victoria tried to call me. I'd changed my number, but she found it somehow, probably through Daniel before he filed for divorce. The phone rang at 7 in the morning. I answered. Margaret, please listen. I hung up. She called back immediately. This time I let it go to voicemail. Margaret, I know you hate me. I know what I did was wrong, but please, there has to be a way to fix this. The house, fine, take it. The IRS thing, I'll work with them, but you don't have to destroy me completely. Think about Emma. Think about what this will do to her. Please call me back. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Victoria's attorney, Nathan Cross, tried a more formal approach. He sent a letter to Jennifer requesting a meeting to discuss resolution options for all parties. Jennifer called me to ask how to respond. Tell him no, I said. There's nothing to discuss. The IRS investigation is out of my hands. The eviction is a matter of trust law. I have no interest in helping Victoria avoid the consequences of her actions. She's desperate, Jennifer said. Desperate people do unpredictable things. She can't hurt me anymore, I said. What's she going to do? Frame me for another crime while under federal investigation herself? She's cornered. Jennifer, let her panic. The real estate agency where Victoria worked made their move on May 15th. They fired her. The official reason was violation of company ethics policies, but everyone knew why. Having an employee under criminal investigation for tax fraud and embezzlement was bad for business. Lisa confirmed it through her sources. Hayes cleaned out her desk yesterday afternoon. There was apparently a scene. She argued with her supervisor, claimed she was being unfairly targeted, threatened to sue for wrongful termination. Security escorted her out. Without her job, Victoria had no income. Without income, she couldn't afford Nathan Cross or any other attorney. The expensive lawyer would drop her soon, leaving her with a public defender who'd be overwhelmed and ineffective. The same kind of public defender I'd had at my trial. The symmetry was almost poetic. Daniel called me on May 21st. Mom, Victoria came by my apartment last night, the one I'm renting while I wait for the house situation to resolve. She was drunk and angry. She blamed you for everything. The investigation, the eviction, me leaving her, losing her job. All of it. She said you'd planned this for 2 years, that you were obsessed with destroying her. Is Emma okay? I asked. She wasn't there. She was at my friend's house for a sleepover. Victoria left before things got worse. But Mom, she's unraveling. I'm scared she might do something stupid. Did you call the police? No, I wanted to warn you. I thought about this. Victoria, drunk and desperate, blaming me for her own crimes. It fit the pattern. She'd never taken responsibility for anything in her life. Why start now? Daniel, if she contacts you again, call the police, document everything, get a restraining order if necessary, and don't tell her anything about me, where I live, my phone number, nothing. Okay, Mom, be careful. I've been careful for 2 years, I said. I'm not stopping now. But that night, alone in my apartment, I thought about what Jennifer had said. Desperate people do unpredictable things. Victoria had everything to lose. Her house, her job, her family, her freedom. Women in that position sometimes make violent choices. I called Lisa. I need you to monitor Victoria Hayes. Her location, her activities, her contacts. Can you do that? Surveillance, Margaret, that's expensive. I have money. Do it. I need to know if she's planning something. Lisa was quiet for a moment. You think she might try to hurt you? I think a woman who'd frame her mother-in-law for embezzlement might do anything when she's cornered, I said. And I'd rather be paranoid and safe than trusting and dead. Understood. I'll start tomorrow. I sat on my balcony until midnight, watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably doing the same thing, but her night was darker than mine. Her future was measured in prison years and bankruptcy filings. Mine was measured in restored reputation and quiet revenge. But Daniel was right about one thing. This wasn't over yet. Victoria still had 3 weeks until the eviction. 3 weeks to be desperate. 3 weeks to make a final stupid mistake. I just needed to make sure that mistake didn't involve me ending up dead. June 10th, 2025. Eviction day. I arrived at the house on Pinewood Avenue at exactly 10 in the morning. The King County Sheriff's Department cruiser was already there, parked in the driveway I'd paved 15 years ago. Deputy Martinez stood by the front door, official papers in hand, looking professionally bored. Jennifer pulled up beside me in her sedan. Ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for 2 years, I said. The house looked the same as when I'd left it. White siding, gray roof, evergreen landscaping that required minimal maintenance. My house, the one I'd bought in 1997 for $160,000 and had paid off by 2011. The one worth $485,000 now. The one Victoria Hayes thought she could steal. The front door opened. Victoria stepped out. She looked terrible. Unshaven legs visible under her wrinkled dress, clothes disheveled, eyes bloodshot and wild. The confident real estate agent who testified against me in court was gone. This was a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. You can't do this, she shouted before I'd even gotten out of the car. This is my home, Emma's home. You're making your own granddaughter homeless. You selfish Miss Hayes. Deputy Martinez interrupted. I need you to step back and let me explain the legal. I don't care about legal. Victoria's voice cracked upward. This whole thing is Margaret's revenge. She's been planning this since prison. She's obsessed. I walked toward the house slowly, deliberately. Jennifer stayed a few steps behind me, briefcase in hand. Victoria saw me approaching, and her face transformed, rage mixing with something that looked like genuine fear. Margaret, please. Her tone changed, became pleading. Please, we can work something out. I'll move out. Fine. But don't do the IRS thing. Don't testify against me. You'll destroy me completely. I'm not testifying against you, I said calmly. Marcus Reed is. I'm just a concerned citizen who reported tax fraud to the appropriate authorities. Victoria's hands were shaking, not from cold. It was already 75 degrees, but from stress, fear, maybe withdrawal. You planned this. Every piece of it. The trust, the investigation, all of it. You spent 2 years planning how to destroy me. Yes, I said simply. I did. That's not justice. That's revenge. Victoria, you framed me for embezzlement. You stole $320,000 from innocent people and made sure I went to prison for it. You testified against me in court, lived in my house, tried to steal my property through legal manipulation, and used my granddaughter as a shield. Now you're facing consequences. That's not revenge. That's accountability. Deputy Martinez cleared his throat. Ms. Hayes, I have an eviction order signed by Judge Morrison. You need to vacate the premises immediately. You can take personal belongings, but the property reverts to the trust as of today. Victoria looked at the deputy, then at me, then at Jennifer. Her eyes were desperate, searching for any angle, any escape. There wasn't one. I'd made sure of that. I have nowhere to go. Victoria said. Her voice broke. No job, no money, no, you had 2 years to prepare for this, I said. I told you at the prison gates that eviction was coming. You chose to spend that time fighting instead of planning. Because this is wrong. Victoria's voice rose again. I made mistakes, okay? I know that. But you're taking everything. The house, my freedom, my family, everything. You took everything from me first, I said quietly. My freedom, my reputation, my practice, 2 years of my life. The difference is, you did it with lies and fraud. I'm doing it with truth and law. Victoria stared at me for a long moment. Then something in her broke. Her shoulders sagged. Her face crumpled. She dropped to her knees right there on the concrete driveway. My driveway. Please, she whispered. Please, Margaret, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll confess to everything. I'll make it right. Just please, don't take it all away. I looked down at her. This woman who'd been so confident in court, so smooth in her lies, so certain she'd gotten away with it, now kneeling on concrete, begging. I felt no pity, no satisfaction either, really, just cold certainty that this was justice. Victoria, I spent 2 years in a cell thinking about this moment. I said, every month you came to visit, trying to make sure I didn't suspect you. Every month I declined, and you went home wondering if I knew. You used my granddaughter as a hostage, living in her trust property, while framing her grandmother for crimes you committed. Now Emma will get this house when she turns 25, just like I planned. The trust guarantees it. And me. Victoria's voice was barely audible. What about me? I paused. You have exactly what you deserve. Nothing. Deputy Martinez stepped forward. Ms. Hayes, you need to stand up and start gathering your belongings. You have 2 hours to remove personal items. After that, the locks will be changed. Victoria stood slowly, her legs shaking. She looked at me one more time, and I saw at the moment she truly understood that she'd lost, that all her scheming, all her manipulation, all her confident plans had led her here. Evicted from the house she'd tried to steal, facing prison for tax fraud, abandoned by her husband, unemployed, and bankrupt. I hate you, she said softly. I know, I replied, but I stopped caring what you think about 23 months ago. She went inside. Through the open door, I could see her moving around, grabbing clothes, personal items. Deputy Martinez followed to supervise. Jennifer stood beside me on the driveway. How does it feel? She asked quietly. Efficient, I said, like closing a well-organized case file. 40 minutes later, Victoria emerged with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. That was all she was taking from the house she'd lived in for 5 years. Deputy Martinez escorted her to a beat-up Honda Civic parked on the street. A friend's car, probably, since Victoria's BMW had been repossessed 2 weeks ago. Victoria loaded her belongings into the trunk. She didn't look at me again, just got in the passenger seat and drove away. I watched the car disappear around the corner. Then I turned to Jennifer. Let's change the locks. I want to inspect the property. Inside, the house was both familiar and foreign. Same layout, same bones, but Victoria and Daniel had changed things. New furniture, different paint colors. Photos of Emma on the walls, my granddaughter growing up in my house while I sat in prison. But it was still my house, still the place I'd built a life with my husband, still the home that would belong to Emma when she was old enough. I walked through the rooms slowly, cataloging what needed to be fixed, what needed to be replaced. Jennifer followed, taking notes for the trust's property manager. In the master bedroom, I found something that made me stop. A chessboard on the dresser, old wooden pieces, hand-carved mine, the one I'd left behind when I was arrested. Victoria had kept it, maybe played on it, maybe thought it was hers now. I picked up the white queen and held it for a moment, then I set it back in its starting position. Checkmate, I said quietly. August 2025, Seattle summer hit, peak 85-degree days that made the city shimmer with unusual heat. Victoria Hayes' plea hearing was scheduled for August 14th. I attended, not because I had to, because I wanted to see it finished. The federal courtroom was cold with aggressive air conditioning. Victoria sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, looking 20 years older than when I'd last seen her. Her public defender, the expensive Nathan Cross, had dropped her within 2 weeks, shuffled papers nervously. Marcus Reed testified first. He'd taken his immunity deal and ran with it. providing emails, text messages, recorded conversations. He explained how Victoria had approached him with a plan to borrow money from her mother-in-law's clients, how he'd helped set up the shell company, how they'd split the money and covered their tracks. I didn't know she was going to frame Mrs. Thompson specifically, he said, not meeting anyone's eyes. I thought she'd just take the money. But then the FBI arrested Margaret, and Victoria testified against her, and I realized what she'd done. I was scared to say anything. Scared enough to take $45,000 and keep quiet for 2 years, but the jury didn't need to hear my opinion on that. The prosecutor laid out the charges: tax evasion totaling $247,000 in unreported income, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft for forging my signatures, wire fraud for the electronic transfers, obstruction of justice for her false testimony at my trial. Victoria's lawyer tried to argue for leniency. Your Honor, my client has lost everything: her job, her marriage, her home, her reputation. She's already suffering consequences. Prison time seems excessive when Judge Reeves, the same judge who'd overseen my appeal, cut him off. Counselor, your client didn't just commit tax fraud, she framed an innocent woman and let her spend 2 years in federal prison. That's not just financial crime, that's a moral atrocity. The sentence reflects both. Victoria was asked if she wanted to make a statement. She stood slowly. I'm sorry, she said, her voice flat and dead. I made terrible choices. I hurt people I should have protected. I deserve punishment. I just want to say, she glanced at where I sat in the gallery. Margaret, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't respond, didn't move, just watched. Judge Reeves sentenced her to 4 years in federal prison, $340,000 in fines and restitution, and 5 years supervised probation after release. Victoria's face went completely blank. She didn't cry or rage or beg, just stood there, empty, as the bailiff led her away. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer met me on the steps. Your exoneration hearing is scheduled for next week. Judge Morrison will formally vacate your conviction and order state compensation. How much? Washington law provides $70,000 per year of wrongful incarceration. You served 2 years. That's $140,000. The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria owed $340,000. I'd receive $140,000. The universe wasn't fair, but sometimes it was mathematically interesting. My exoneration hearing took 15 minutes. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence: Marcus's testimony, Lisa's financial investigation, the proof that Victoria had forged documents and perjured herself. She formally vacated my conviction, ordered the state to pay compensation, and apologized on behalf of the court system. Mrs. Thompson, what was done to you was a grave injustice, she said. I hope this provides some measure of closure. Closure came later, in smaller moments. Daniel visited my apartment in late August. We met at a coffee shop instead, neutral ground. He looked healthier than the last time I'd seen her. Clear-eyed, calmer. I'm in therapy, he said without preamble, dealing with the Victoria stuff, the betrayal, the lies, how I ignored warning signs. My therapist says I have trust issues now. He laughed, weakly, which is fair. How's Emma? I asked, confused. She doesn't really understand why Mama went away, or why we moved out of Grandma's house. I'm trying to explain it in ways an 8-year-old can process. He paused. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I chose wrong. But I want you to know, I'm working on being better. For Emma, for myself, I know you are, I said. And Daniel, we'll get there. It'll take time, but we'll get there. You're still my son. He cried, then not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears of relief. We didn't hug or have some movie moment, just sat there drinking coffee while he processed. But it was a start. September brought cooler weather and new routines. I moved back into the house on Pinewood Avenue. The trust paid me a modest property management fee to maintain it until Emma turned 25. I spent weeks fixing things Victoria had neglected, repainting rooms, restoring what she'd damaged. In the living room, I set up my old workbench for clock restoration, the hobby I'd abandoned during the stress of running my practice. I bought broken vintage clocks from estate sales and spent quiet evenings bringing them back to life. There was something satisfying about taking broken things and making them work again. Emma visited on Saturdays. Daniel would drop her off in the morning, and we'd spend the day together. I taught her chess using my old hand-carved set. She was sharp, asked good questions, thought 3 moves ahead, even at 8 years old. Grandma, why does the knight move weird? She asked during our 3rd lesson. Because sometimes the best path isn't straight, I said. Sometimes you have to think differently to win. She considered this, then moved her knight into position to fork my king and rook. Like that, I smiled. Exactly like that. I didn't restart Thompson Tax Consulting. That life was finished. Instead, I became a consultant for the Washington Attorney General's office, specializing in financial fraud investigations, helping prosecutors understand complex tax schemes, money laundering operations, embezzlement patterns. Turned out, 2 years studying law in prison had made me valuable. I knew how criminals thought now. I knew their patterns, their mistakes, their weaknesses, and I was very good at helping authorities catch them. On a Saturday evening, in mid-September, I sat on my back patio, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. Emma had just left after beating me in chess for the first time. A clean victory. I hadn't let her have. She'd earned it. My phone buzzed. A text from Officer Torres, the guard from Riverside who'd helped me start this whole thing. Saw Hayes's sentencing in the news. Congratulations, Mrs. Thompson. Justice served. I texted back, thanks. Visit Seattle sometime. I'll buy you lunch. I set the phone down and thought about the past 2 years. The planning, the patience, the methodical destruction of Victoria Hayes's life. Some people might call it revenge. A therapist would probably say I was obsessed. But I knew what it really was. Consequences. Victoria had chosen to frame an innocent woman. I'd chosen to make sure she paid for that choice. Everything I'd done was legal, documented, and justified. Justice, like chess, requires patience, strategy, and the ability to see several moves ahead. I'd played this game for 2 years, and I'd delivered checkmate.